Chapter 8 Alarm Clock. The story that was set free. Even without meaning to, you already are too distant. Rather, I should have been by your side more. I should have thought better. I should have been more sensible and patient than that. I should have given you a proper goodbye. From the day I missed you. Looking back at it, those were precious times. After breaking up, more memories with the man came back often. It might have been due to the remains of him she came across some days ago. She realized that there was something still tied inside her chest, and although she did not know precisely what that was, the material that held that knot was her resent towards him, the longing and disillusion for the time they spent together for all those years, and a distrust of love. The deadline, right. The deadline is just around the corner. The woman held on to reality in order to ignore the frustration holding her heart back every moment. While immersed in work, her faltering heart tended to find a sort of stable track. Again, another night of finishing a war-like deadline and going back home. She inhaled a cup of coffee and walked past the closed curtains because she could not stand to see the light. It was raining outside of the window. The lump in her heart, forgotten for a brief moment, called out in agony again. What was that? For all her resentment and pride, that was something she could not believe. What could that be? The woman took a sip of coffee. The bitter taste filled her mouth. While taking another sip, she took a look down the rain-soaked alley through the window. What a pretty little street. On rainy days like today, a street they had walked under the same umbrella, and on sunny days, a street they had walked with Danny running before them. And at times, when they could not overcome their sorrows, a street they walked separately. It was a street where the two of them alone cherished the time spent. The place her gaze followed the street to, ironically, was his home. In an instant, the strings tied inside of her chest snapped, and the knot hiding its true color burst out with a pop. That was love. She still loved him. And the last conversation she shared with him resounded inside her mind by its own will. The moment the rose-colored lenses of love come off is when all hell breaks loose. His words were not wrong. He broke up because his rose-colored lenses fell off, and right after parting, she became busy hating him under the shadow of losing her love. Now she was starting to see things as they were, and the doors of hell opened. She was still loving him. She struggled to hold down the feelings that were flowing out, but they had already burst out and were growing in full bloom. Now there was no turning back. Look at this. The language you found so endearing annoys you to death. The adorable image of them eating now looks like a pig. Their cute charming feels only like bothersome nagging. There is no more vivacity when staring into each other's eyes. Holding hands is sweaty and gross. Kissing turned into nothing more than a habit. The breakup night was deeply ingrained into her memory, the vivid sound of the words he said on that night tearing at her chest repeatedly. No longer able to stand looking at the blurry image of his home, she shut the blinds and sat down. Then, when she was so exhausted she could cry no longer, the woman went to bed. Tomorrow was another day, and while telling herself that she must now sleep and prepare for tomorrow, she set up her alarm and hoped that this was all a dream. that when she woke up tomorrow morning, she would be able to greet him like nothing had happened, and wished that she could tell him with a laugh that she had a weird dream, an impossible dream where the two of them broke up. Greedy as it may be, eat together even if he jokes that she looks like a pig, and hold his hand just because she can, even without wanting to, and look into each other's eyes even if it's lifeless, and listen to his charming words even if they sound like nagging. Kiss him, even if it just feels like habit. She wanted him by her side like it used to be. Like a flower that falls as a little raindrop brushes by, you say those words like it's nothing to you.
Chapter 9. I'm sorry. Recently, the man had taken to drinking more frequently. He was struggling through a hangover after trying to drown his longing. Whoever broke up first, how much time has passed since, none of these things mattered anymore. What mattered was that the two people who used to be us had become just someones. After the breakup, the man and the woman had perfectly returned to the relationship they had before meeting each other 5 years ago. At least, that was how it felt like to him. Then what was this longing that came over him? That longing was not a reminiscent of love that had not yet oxidized. It was an unexpected loneliness and regretfulness towards her, as well as nostalgia over who he used to be, back when he loved her so passionately. From time to time, when the man became flooded with his longing, all he wanted was to walk up to the woman right away and lament over how he wants his old self back. But as the man did not want to hurt her with his selfish behavior or cause any more misunderstandings, he instead opened his diary, like usual. And so he thought of her, who had become his reason to hold a pen for so many years. Even without meaning to, we are already distant. I only came to understand you too late. And worse yet, it turned into a relationship where we were barely more than strangers. I always had a feeling about the day we would break up. I thought that it would be the day the sky would break in half. I thought the ground would give out under my feet. I thought that trapped inside the rip of the sky, holed up into the ground, I would miss you for the rest of my life. I thought that even when you didn't love me anymore, I'd hold on to my resentment and regret for the rest of my life. I too worry very much. To not think of the time you and I spent together anymore, I even tried to hate those memories. I ripped apart a book I got from you, innocent, page by page, in vain, and I tried throwing away all the gifts I hadn't given you, but all I could manage was to hide them behind the mirror. And despite all that, my attachment remains. Even the ring that was too troublesome to wear while we were together is now stuck on my finger. I too do the very best I can. Even without meaning to, you already are too distant. Rather, I should have been by your side more. I should have thought better. I should have been more sensible and patient than that. I should have let you be the one to say goodbye. I too regret it very much. The writing man carelessly tossed the pen onto the desk. In all certainty, he did not love her anymore. But what was this feeling he could not let go of, like he was being dragged down into quicksand? The more you struggle, the deeper you fall into darkness. In the silence of his home, the same song had been playing for days. Note: I'll still apologize for what I'm not responsible for.
Chapter 10. Maybe tomorrow. Such as the ocean returned to stillness after a sweeping storm, the woman's seemingly non-stop shaking heart to quiet down. She could not know when that would abruptly change again, but for now, she was all right. He was, slow and surely, being erased from her. However, if there was one thing that had not changed, was that she was still suffering from a worsening headache and insomnia ever since he left. After she finished organizing the manuscript for the upcoming interview next month, the woman, busy as ever, got a cup of coffee for takeout from the cafe in front of her company as usual. I should stop drinking coffee. It'd be better for my insomnia. It was a little past 1 in the morning. On a regular day, such hour would have felt like the night was just starting. But after today, everything felt overwhelming and exhausting to the woman. Perhaps she had been too absorbed into her work. She had completely forgotten she had left the car at the auto mechanic in the morning. She had been driving it for 5 years with no big accident, but she still had to take it for a checkup from time to time. Had she not forgotten she did not have her car, she would have left work at around 11 p.m. to take a bus back home. I can't do this. I'll have to take a taxi. The woman supposed that would be better. She drank so much coffee today that her hands were shaking, and while her mind might have been clear, her body was on the verge of a meltdown from fatigue. It was a dangerous state to be driving at such late hour of the night. Tushin Sadong, please. Resting her body on the back seat of the cab, she felt comfortable for the first time in what seemed like ages. As she quietly closed her eyes, a voice she had heard before reached her ears. It was the radio. The voice of that singer she interviewed months ago. The accent and intonation so distinctive that she recognized it immediately. Right, he said he is a radio host. Sometimes there are these days. A day that is tiring and overwhelming for no particular reason. A day when things that are usually easy just don't work out. So it's a day twice as irritating. In this sort of a day, even if people around me try to cheer me up, it doesn't really comfort me. I just wish they'd listen to me and nod. Sometimes hearing those encouragements just feels like being pressured to get over my feelings. The woman nodded at the man's faint words. Yeah, if somebody told me to just cheer up right now, I might get mad and pour coffee on their face or something. Of course that people trying to cheer me up is not a bad thing, but sometimes, rather than cheer up, I want to hear something that is more like, it's alright, you can rest today, just leave the rest for tomorrow, you know? Good thing you can't reach my coffee. With her eyes closed, she enjoyed an unexpected resting break. It was like the warm coffee scent and the man's soft voice brought her comfort. The taxi cab drove down the silent roads and arrived at her home before she knew it. Still curious about the next words of the singer's interrupted speech, the woman fumbled with her phone as she slowly walked into her home. You can listen to the radio on your phone these days, right? The app downloaded quickly enough, and thankfully the radio was not over yet. Anyways, to everybody who worked hard today, those who are tired for whatever reason and lost their strength, I want to let you know that you did well. Let's cheer up. Tomorrow will be better. I always wrap up by saying that, but today I don't want to. It's alright to only cheer up by tomorrow. No, it's okay if it's only after tomorrow too. It's alright to be sad for a while. Please come to me whenever, because I'll be here. It's alright to cheer up tomorrow. It's alright to be sad for a while. Those gentle, comforting words of that man seemed to cheer her up more than any encouragement would. When he said to always come to him, that he will be there, she thought that perhaps she could start listening to his radio more often. The last song we'll listen to is Maybe Tomorrow. Come and rest again tomorrow. The woman laid down on her bed and closed her eyes as she listened to the song on the radio. Note: it's alright, it's alright, it's alright.
Chapter 11. Red Candle. The woman was edging away from the shadow of the breakup, as the man was also going on with daily life as usual, even though his days of drinking had increased, unable to escape his guilty conscience and longing for his past self. The man was drinking with a friend that had been going out with him often as of lately, and as always, it came all of a sudden. Senior, to be frank, watching you with your girlfriend during all this time was very difficult for me. I couldn't have said it, but when you told me you were tired after the honeymoon phase, I thought maybe you'd realize. Couldn't it be me? Is it not enough for me to be by your side? He was disconcerted. His loneliness grew day after day, but he was not certain that a new love would be able to free him from this loneliness and solitude. And in that moment, he was suddenly confessed to the least expected person. Not knowing how he should answer, the man only downed another shot. You don't have to answer right away. It's that I'm upset seeing you down lately, you know? I'm just trying to help. The man thought of how he must have had done something big in his past life to deserve so many people who love him. And all of those who loved him also seemed to feel responsible for his unhappiness. From that day on, the junior started to come by the man's home office daily to look after him by cooking and cleaning. At first, that attitude was awkward and annoying, but nevertheless, the man became gradually used to the non-stopping footsteps of his junior. Eventually, it was not uncomfortable to be alone with each other in the office anymore. And by the time the man had become closer to his junior, they kissed. He was not sure if he really loved the junior. At one moment, their gazes crossed, and they just embraced each other with no hesitation. Still, their relationship had not changed since that day. One given night, the man had lit a candle as he waited for his friend, when suddenly the thought came to him that the candle reminded him of the junior. Then he held the pen and slowly started writing. Crackle, crackle. Sounds the burning of the candle's woodwick. Woodwick candles always burn up so loudly. In my dark and silent room, the frail flame of the candle and the pitiful crackling of the woodwick are all there is. Is devotion, perhaps, that which fills the candle? To be so willing to burn for me. Such flimsy wick's fire that ought not shine very long, speaks to me in an ardent voice. I'm here. I know. Are you warm? I couldn't lie and say I was warm when it burned up so eagerly. I couldn't even embrace it in fear my flesh would burn. A child that willingly burned itself into black. All this time, a poor child calling out to me. A child who loved me. I couldn't so much as sigh in fear that I'd extinguish you. While writing with the junior in his mind, the man reached his certain conclusion. He didn't love the junior. What he felt was a mixture of gratefulness and sorriness, and the fear of losing someone else, a feeling with a color quite different from love. "Senior, have you been waiting? I came. Starting tomorrow, you don't need to come anymore." "Oh? You have your own life to take care of. I can cook and clean up for myself. Don't come here anymore." "All right, but since I came today, let's get something to eat together." The reply from the junior was calmer than the man expected, and it stilled him as he thought that was rather fortunate. Then the junior went back to eating without another word. That night, the man felt a sense of regret that contradicted his actions, and he slept with Dani in his arms and a troubled heart. The next day, the junior came back to the man's office at the exact same hour again, as if nothing had happened. When he saw the junior, the man was overcome with relief that he did not see coming, and the relationship remained unchanged. Notes. It's so hot within your embrace that it feels like I might melt.
Chapter 12. Diphylleia Grayi. The seasons had changed, and now it was distantly spring. A warm spring shower was raining down. The man had been staring vacantly out of the window when he suddenly started packing up. "Where are you going?" asked the junior, hands wiping on the apron after finishing with the dinner's dirty dishes. I'll spend some time in Jeju Island." "Jeju? Why this so suddenly?" "Just 'cause. I gotta do something there." The unknown island of Jeju, an isolated place surrounded by water on all sides. But not a lonely place. The man went to visit Jeju from time to time, and he would go alone, leave his time and memories buried in that island, and come back. The reason that place is not lonely must be because of all the past he has left scattered around there. "Do you have good memories from there? For a guy who hates going out, you sure travel a lot," lightly spoke the junior, hands still shaking around to dry. No, he was not going due to good memories or something to celebrate. He went there because it was a place with no memories at all. One should let memorable places remain beautiful, not soil it with a mess of memories and time. It should be 3 or 4 days at most. Only until Sunday maximum. I'll let you know when I arrive, don't worry. Regarding him carefully, the junior felt that the man's aura was heavier than usual, and spoke. "All right, then leave Dan in my care." "I was gonna ask you exactly that. Thank you." He took his luggage and headed to the airport. The rain had stopped before he knew it. At that moment, the woman was barely holding her eyes open. The previous day, she had been up all night organizing her news reports and thus switched night for day. Since even her passionate cramming through the night, the manuscript had still not been completed, she woke up little by little, washed up, and gave a late start to her day. She had sat in front of the computer with the resolution of finishing the manuscript until 11 o'clock in the night, but of course, it ended up completed much later than planned. Her initial plan of wrapping up early and catching a movie had been greedy. Why am I like this? At least it's all done now. She stretched out her stiff body after slaving away sitting in front of the computer for so long. Then she put on her cardigan, grabbed her phone and earbuds, and walked out of home. She stuffed in her earbuds as she walked in the direction of the Han River. It had been so long since she last took a night stroll. The woman relaxed with big breaths. It was getting a bit moist. The pleasant spring air flowed into her. The man landed on Jeju in the last plane. The weather there was clear. As soon as he arrived, he rented a car and drove to watch the sea in the night of Shawols. It had been a while since he last drove around. It was a little awkward after his body had been so used to the passenger seat for many years. The man drove slowly as he had no companion or plans to follow on this trip. A perfectly empty road in the late hour. The man turned on the radio as he thought some music could lift up his cold spirit. In the absence of any of the programs he used to listen to, he raised the volume of whatever was tuned in. You're a flower, turning transparent as it wets. The regret drenches through the white petals between us. Invisible, but not disappearing. At least it doesn't hurt when I can't see it. That seemed like a program which recited poems. Since he had only turned on the radio for his discomfort with silence, the man figured anything was good as long as it was not too noisy, and left the channel unchanged.
Same time, Seoul. Thanks to the warm spring weather, quite a few people were out at the Han River despite the later hour. The woman sat down on a bench after her walk. She felt the spring air while listening to the radio she had come to follow at this time of the day for a while now. There's a flower named Diphylleia Grayi. It's a tiny white flower whose petals turn transparent when it gets wet from the rain or dew. Incredible, right? A while ago I wanted to express the meaning of our lives as a flower. I wanted a pretty or cool flower, but while looking for it, I came to learn about this dreamy flower. It really is a dreamlike flower if its petals turn invisible. She sharpened her ears to his voice. Throughout our lives, there are things so glaring that we can't avoid them. And there are also those which aren't visible to the eye, but are always with us, like the petals of this flower. He came back to her mind all at once, but it did not squeeze up her chest in pain like before. This time, the thought of him was even a little bearable. It was just stifling, only a little suffocating. She was suddenly curious. What would he be doing now? The man arrived in Shawols by night. He had parked on a spot where the sea was visible and was listening to the radio on maximum volume. The waves rolled back and forth in the dark ocean. I can't avoid you. Even as our love got cold and we broke up, you're still with me. That's why I'm coming here. To the man, Jeju Island was the place he came to leave behind his secrets. He came this far to lay the memories of the past 5 years with her into the sea. If the desire to go back to the island and regain those memories ever comes, they will already have been broken down and washed away by the waves, never to be fully found again. And as such, these times and memories would remain fragmented, scattered somewhere on the island, scattered somewhere on the sand, and he would have to remember her bit by bit if he was to come back. He was suddenly curious. What would she be doing now? Life is drenched with emotion. We are dipped in each other's colors, only to dry up again. Isn't that so? In fact, the world is fluctuating as it always does. I think it's only me who's changed the most. To understand and humbly accept this change, I try to believe that this is the base for happiness. 5 years ago, the man and the woman were so drenched in each other's love, flowing so transparent as to forget the limit between one and the other. Their pain and their love slowly dried up, back to what it was before they were together. That beautiful era had passed, and nothing that belonged to it existed anymore. The man and the woman thought of how they wanted to be happy, and realized that for that to happen, it was time to let each other go. Please listen to today's final song, Diphylleia Grayi. Come and rest again tomorrow. As if proof of fate, the two of them in different places and at the same time decided to release each other, set free the warm love they once had. As the song played, the man and the woman shed tears to their definitive farewell, hugging each other close and unseen. Only then did they truly tell each other goodbye. And they promised that when they remember each other from time to time, they will hurt just a little bit and miss each other very, very much. On the next day, he went home with 5 years of time and memory drained out of him, and she started an ordinary, although slightly disappointing day.
Author's note. What is music to me? This question might seem a bit tiring, but it was once a big issue for me. The first time I held a bass guitar was in middle school. At that time, music was a fun thing to play with for me, but since I started my career as a singer, the 2 syllables of music weighed on me heavier than anything in the world. For a long time, I worried about it, a surge of shame coming over me as I thought, while I don't understand the real meaning of music, I'm not really making it. The 3 basic elements of music: melody, harmony, and rhythm. I wanted to know what music was to me beyond this dictionary definition. I spent a long time with this question hovering over my head, and carefully I arrived to the answer. Music is a story. A story that can be imagined, empathized, and identified with. No matter what sort of story you sing, if the singer's tale stirs up feelings inside of the listener, that's how I know it's good music. And the empathy and identity born from good music, in turn, draw out the most wonderful power within music. The power to expand your imagination. What is the story before this song starts? What story will happen after this song ends? In music, the lines of start and end are ambiguous. That's why it has so much effect on the listeners. It creates curiosity. So when I'm listening to good music, these emotions will spark up like I am the protagonist of that story, like that song is my world. When I want to make good music, I'm ambitious, always fantasizing about the before and after as I write it, and by the time this turned into a habit, I wondered if it couldn't be even more interesting to connect all these fantasies into one world. If there was a single story that expanded through the ambiguous starts and ends of my songs, it could create more complex feelings. If I gave them context and characters, we could draw a clearer picture of it. I thought this could be another way of appreciating music. I wrote this book with this ambition. Not just to appease the imagination of the listener about the before and after of a song, but from the desire to retell it in a different color as the person who made it myself. And thus I had to do with my disheveled writing skills. For the sake of my own imagination, I wanted to try it. If you know the songs presented throughout this book, I hope you'll listen to them once more as you read, and that it'll feel different than before. Otherwise, I hope that you can feel it deeper than before. Even though this is just a loose piece of writing, I hope that this book, in its ambiguous genre as novel, lyrics, or essay, can become your own story with him and her and me.